Welcome to Epicenter, the show which talks about the technologies, projects, and people driving decentralization and the blockchain revolution. This is phenomenal. Today is Epicenter's 10th birthday, and we're very pleased to be doing this special edition live stream with lots of special guests, and as you'll see here, a special co-host who I'll introduce in just a second. But first, I just want to say just how exciting this is that 10 years ago, Brian and I were releasing the very first pilot episode of Epicenter. So throughout this live stream, we'll be bringing in people. It's sort of a call-in show. We'll have like lots of friends, listeners, and former guests of the show come in, give their thoughts or share their impressions on the industry, and also share some interesting anecdotes. We've also got some Epicenter trivia, and we'll go back down memory lane. I've got some stuff prepped here to keep everything exciting. But first, welcome everyone. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Good.
So
10 years, crazy stuff.
Yeah, so I want to just introduce the person down on the bottom right here. So Adam B Levine, who I'm sure the OGs will remember as the host of Let's Talk Bitcoin, and people who have been listening to the show long enough will know the story of how Brian and I met back in 2013 through Let's Talk Bitcoin. So Adam, why don't you just introduce yourself briefly here, and we'll get started.
Sure. Thanks, Seb. Yeah, I'm Adam B. Levine. I've been on basically both sides of like disruptive technology, journalism, and entrepreneurialism. About 11 years ago at this point, I started Let's Talk Bitcoin in the spring of 2013. And that was kind of immediately right place, right time. Fifth Bitcoin podcast I'd started at that point, there was really no other shows around that were talking about this stuff. And then as we came into the end of the year, we were very popular, growing very fast. And I was annoyed that there were no other shows that I could listen to outside of myself. And I do like listening to my own voice. But that led me to start a contest through the network that had about 20 submissions, and I think we can confirm at this point that Epicenter is the longest lasting, greatest success that came out of that batch. But it was a pretty good batch, and a lot of those shows lasted for a few years. So that was sort of the, another catalyst moment. I like to do that whenever I can, and I'm very happy that you guys have had such success, and I'm very happy that I was able to help you guys get started. So congratulations on 10 years. It's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I got into Bitcoin, it was basically just when you guys started Let's Talk Bitcoin, maybe like a month after that. And I was like writing my master's thesis at the time. So I didn't have like too much time, except whenever I was like cycling somewhere. I was living in Berlin at the time. I was listening to Let's Talk Bitcoin, right? So I listened to like all of the episodes, and it was like a really, really great way to kind of get into it. And it was super exciting. And then and I was just a fan of of podcasts, right? Because like it was for me kind of the one of the main ways of learning about Bitcoin early on. So then when I was like, okay, I want to work fully in this area, and you had this contest, and I was a fan of the sort of podcast format, and felt it was such a powerful way to learn, to build a network, to speak with interesting people. And then the chance to launch our own podcast was exciting. And then I remember, I think he had this call out, and it said like, okay, there's going to be a call for anyone interested in participating. And it was only like maybe 5-6 people on this call. And I think Sebastien and I were the only ones in Europe. We didn't know each other.
Yeah.
At the time. And then we were like, okay, let's try to do this thing together.
Yeah.
And yeah, did that pilot episode, and it was surprising actually how many people still ended up doing the pilot episode, right? Because in that first call you organized, there was not a lot of people in there.
Yeah.
But afterwards, quite a lot of episodes came through, and I'm excited we kept going.
Yeah, I think it was about 20 episodes. I think we had about 20 pilots that came out of that, and I think the intent was to be like, hey, this is going to be the the top 2 or 3 shows, and I think we wound up taking on 7 or 8 because we were like, oh, well, actually, this is all pretty compelling. And yeah, I remember that call that I remember the kickoff call, and I think that the way that you guys started working on the show together was I was like, well, you're both in Europe. You should probably just do the pilot together because this is hard. I'm pretty sure that was that I said something to that extent. You guys were like, okay, why not?
Yeah, I think that was basically it. It was just like, why don't you get like these Europeans work together? Yeah, but I also remember that call. I mean, I remember I was like in my kitchen, like where I used to be living, and Brian and I afterwards like had another chat, and then got to know each other, and then we only actually met in person like 2 or 3 months later, actually in February of the following year at Let's Talk in Berlin, and like for me that whole period was such a transitionary period. I had been working in sort of web design and web product development before that, e-commerce, and it was such a whole new world. And I remember, Brian, I don't know if you remember this, but we went to this dinner. I don't think it was at Let's Talk. I don't think it was at Inside Bitcoin's Berlin. I think it was at the Amsterdam conference in 2014. And we went to this dinner, and there were all these sort of like VC types, and it was organized by Matt Rozak and Brock Pierce.
No, that was in Berlin.
Folks from that was in Berlin, right? So
yeah, it was Brock Pierce and Matt Rozak organized that dinner.
Exactly. Yeah. And like Blockchain Ventures guys were sitting next to us, and like at some point, like I remember you looked at me and you said, "Okay, Seb, from now on, from this point forward, we're now co-founders." Because I think before that we had sort of envisioned this as sort of being a bit of a hobby and kind of a thing that we did on the side. But then at that point you're like, okay, this is something that we're really going to pursue because this is like basically Bitcoin and blockchain are going to change the world, and like we want to be part of this, and we want to sort of project ourselves as entrepreneurs in this space and not just hobbyists. And I remember that was like an important sort of mind shift for me from that point on. Like, okay, now I'm working in blockchain full time, and that's sort of what happened from that point on.
Yeah, and it was also very good, I think, like combination to us together, because you were very good at also at the whole like website, figuring out the whole like technical, all of the sort of how to actually produce a podcast, put it out, the audio, all of these things that was like very helpless with. So it was like, I think we were like a great, I was more like interested in reading the white papers and preparing questions and stuff. But like, I think we were like a great great complementary skill set. So I think that, allowed us to produce this thing consistently. And then, of course, we started having more hosts, right? I think Meher joined as the third host in, I think it was like 2015.
Actually, so this is my first trivia question.
Okay.
So I've got some trivia questions here, and then we'll start bringing in the guests here. So the first trivia question is for all the co-hosts actually. So when did Meher first join? What was Meher's first episode? And maybe Meher, you're also open to welcome to answer this question, but I don't know if you remember. But yeah, maybe Brian, maybe you remember.
I don't remember the first episode. I think it was like 2015 that he joined, if I remember correctly, but I don't remember what episode.
So it was episode 97. It was with Paul Stork.
Oh, right. The drive chain stuff?
Drive chains, there you go.
Truth drive chains. Truthcoin,
yeah,
that's right.
Truthcoin.
Back then, Truthcoin.
Yeah, and Sunny, do you remember your first episode? Okay.
Does anyone else remember?
I didn't remember. I remembered Meher's, but I didn't remember yours or Federico's.
I'll say it. I'm pretty sure it was Charles Hoskinson.
I wish I had a bell. Like, bing, bing,
Yes,
bing, bing.
I think Brian knew I was like really into Ethereum Classic at the time, and so then he like asked me like, "Hey, do you want to do this one with Charles Hoskinson?" I think that was how I did my first episode.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
I think
Sonny
we
and
did that
I
one
met.
together.
Yeah. Sonny and I met. So I was working at Tenement in 2017, and then we had this retreat in the summer of 2017 in Canada. And then Sonny was like, I don't know, like 19 at the time or something like that, you know.
That was my next question. How old was Sonny when he first joined Epicenter? The correct answer was not old enough to drink.
Yeah.
Well, depends where.
Yeah, in Canada, yeah. And Frederica, do you remember your first episode?
I was going to look it up now, but I didn't. I think it's Coin Fund, and I think it was in 2018. And it's also
That's
super
right.
funny because Brian and I, we had actually known each other for a while, and we had worked from the same office, the ETH office in Berlin for a while. And then we actually started a co-working space together, Full Node, in Berlin in 2017. But the way I actually got on the podcast the first time is when I met Muirhead at a dinner, and he said, "Oh, you should join Epicenter."
Yeah, I think it had sort of come up as an
And I
idea,
guess,
and we had
Felix is not
discussed
here.
it, and then at some point, I think Muirhead was like, asked you, and then I'm super happy that worked out, and that you've become a key, invaluable host and part of the show. So
Yeah, and it's such a pleasure.
yeah.
And Felix isn't here yet, but his first one was with Dan Finlay of MetaMask. He joined a bit later in 2022. But hopefully he'll join the live stream in just a bit. Let's get we've got some people here in the green room that we wanted to bring on. Who's on first? I think Trent.
I think Trent is first.
Yeah.
Right?
All right, let's bring him in. Hey, Trent.
Great to be here.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. And first off, congratulations, 10 years. It's hard to believe. Wow. I loved hearing these stories already from what you guys are sharing. A lot of Berlin things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Trent was also, one of the first people, right, in Bitcoin in Berlin, and started, a whole sequence of startups. Was Ascribe the first one, or?
It was Ascribe, which pivoted to BigChainDB, which pivoted to Ocean. So I've been at Ocean for 6 years, I guess, now.
Yeah, and Ascribe, a lot of people will not know Ascribe, but Ascribe was basically doing something like NFTs, right, on the Bitcoin blockchain. So they were basically, taking these artworks and sort of, tracking the ownership of these artworks on chain. And I remember having lots of discussions there. And I was always like, but does this make sense? Because sort of the image is there anyway, and anyone can copy it, so you can't really protect that. But it doesn't make sense to protect its ownership. And I was always like, at the one hand, I thought it was very cool, and the other hand, I'm like, does it really make sense? And then, of course, NFTs became absolutely massive. But I think that was really the first project and you guys were doing cool things, right? Working with, interesting artists and galleries, and also way ahead of your time with that project.
Yeah, it was really fun. I mean, we had decent traction, but, we were too early for the money side of things, so we had to pivot. And interestingly, NFTs took off in Bitcoin, a year and a half ago? And, now they've been spreading. The mechanism, BRC20, is sort of not much different than a hash on the output transaction. It's sort of, taking advantage of the witness stuff. But then people took that idea and dumped it into the other EVM chains for basically lower transaction fees. And it's been spreading. It's called inscriptions, right? If you guys are following this, it's hilarious. And there's big complaints about dust and all the other chains and, breaking chains one by one every week, it seems. But it's actually fascinating because BRC20 is actually very similar to the Spool protocol we developed back in the day. And, for us, it's like, we're really happy that NFTs finally took off. Maybe it wasn't us, but, we're still playing in blockchain and building. So it's great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think you've also been on the show a whole bunch of times. I think we did a Ascribe. So I guess we did all of the things. We did Ascribe, BitcoinDB, Ocean. I think several Ocean episodes maybe. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I remember probably one funny one. It was Consensus 2017. I had just come off stage and I had an interview lined up with Sebastian. And I randomly met Fred Ursum right at the tail end of my talk, and he's like, "Trent, we need to talk." Co-founder of Coinbase, right? And I'm like, "Okay, I'm going off to do an interview with Epicenter. Do you want to join me?" Because I knew he'd already been writing about decentralized data markets, and the interview was going to be partly on that. So I basically hijacked Sebastian with Fred.
I remember this. I remember you came on, and I think already, I was sort of on edge because it was like the first time I did an episode solo. Because usually, it's always two hosts, right? And so in the early days, when I do an episode solo, I always just be a little bit self-conscious about it. And then you bring on this other person randomly, right? And I was like, okay. But yeah, it ended up being really good.
Yeah, it was a really lively discussion. Fred's a ball of energy, so it was really fun.
Yeah, so actually, this is sort of related to the next trivia question here, which is who have been our most frequent guests?
I think it's Vitalik.
How many times has he been on?
5 times.
Meher says no. Who's our most frequent guest?
Trent.
Really?
Could
wow.
be. I mean, both could be true. Anybody else?
think-
Any other guesses?
Martin's also been on a bunch of times.
He has.
I'm gonna throw in a guess. I don't know if it's right, but maybe Goon.
I think Vitalik.
So actually, a lot of these answers are true. So Vitalik has been on 6 times.
Oh, wow.
Goon has also been on 6 times.
Ooh.
And this Trent, this is your 6th time as well.
Oh.
I'm in very good company.
So you're in good company. And I mean, not excluding, of course, although she was more of a host at some times, but Sean Jones, who was a frequent contributor to the show in the early days, who would come on to talk about regulation and the shifting regulatory landscape. And then, but yeah, Martin's been on 3 times. So, I mean, as a guest, I don't know, maybe as a host also. He's been on as a host once or twice.
Before this call, I was reviewing some of the episodes, and the early episodes from Gun were on Consensus and really fun. I always loved those. But then there was the one he had with Vlad on the worries about the DAO. This was before the DAO hack. So after the DAO hit 150 million, but before the DAO hack. So that was a really pivotal episode, a really fun one.
Oh yeah, and that episode actually, there's also some funny, how that turned out. A funny story around that. So, the SEC published this paper, right? The first thing they published on crypto, which was basically the DAO is a security. And they cited that podcast we did with Goon and Vlad Samper in that paper as evidence that it was security, because they were basically talking about how it's kind of centralized and you have these curators and they have this kind of control, and so it's funny how that's ended up being cited by the SEC as a
the U.S. government watches Epicenter.
Yeah.
Oh wow. I remember actually the week that the DAO hack was going down, I actually was in Ukraine, not Berlin at the time, and Vlad was there. It was so him and I were sitting watching it, and he was having to run away to help fix things as well. And then at the same time, it was the same week as the Bitcoin halvening. So there was, I forget the name, but it was one of the Bitcoin maxi guys, a really interesting dude. And he was really excited about the halvening, but there's also this DAO, and from him it was a bit of Schadenfreude as well. But overall, a highly interesting week that week. Halvening was 10% of the stuff. The hack was the big thing. but also the outcome. Ethereum Classic was already mentioned. All this, right? A lot of really interesting things, and that was really sort of when Ethereum started to grow up in a good way, right? You've got to have trial by fire to really be successful. So I think it's really cool how the community came through.
Adam, I wanted to ask you as well. Like, I mean, like in your podcast journey, you know, what has been the most significant or transformative change that you've seen in the last like 11 years of doing crypto podcasts?
The biggest one is definitely the move to tokens. If you remember back in, you know, when you guys were just getting started, this was right after Mastercoin had come out with the first meta token layer, which was awful. And it was right before, I think, Counterparty had come out. So these are both meta layers for tokens on top of Bitcoin. And before that, the norm was, if you want to create a token, you need to figure out miners, you need to figure out distribution, and there was just all this complexity and infrastructure that went along with it. And after that, it was not the case. It was different economics that unlocked a lot of stuff. So that was a really significant one. One of my favorite things that I did there was, for a couple of years we ran it as a full kind of news desk, and you know, did investigative journalism and stuff like that. And I remember in the run up to the final collapse of Mt. Gox, I spent I think in a very late evening working with Charlie Shrem and Napoleon, can't remember his last name, but basically ripping through all of the documentation around Mt. Gox and trying to figure out what it all meant, you know, in kind of the I think it was a few weeks before the thing actually fully collapsed, because there had been all sorts of rumors circulating and stuff like that. There are a bunch of things like that, you know, that just like those early days, there's something so fundamentally fun and interesting to me about doing journalism in areas of really advanced technology that nobody understands. And like, that's true about technology generally, but when you're talking about something like crypto, you're really talking about really complex, you know, like multifaceted group dynamics, and, you know, leaderless systems, right? Like, leaderless systems are just wild things. And so it's, again, like, yeah, I mean, like, even outside of just crypto, like, that's probably some of the most fun journalistic experiences that I've had, is just kind of trying to run that stuff down and figure out what's real and what's not, because it's so hard to tell.
Yeah, and the token stuff that you guys were doing really early on Let's Talk Bitcoin, like I've told that story. I've talked about that with people like so many times recently. I mean, because like there's this new, I mean, I guess it is starting to become more productized, like this idea of providing some sort of a token or NFT for like doing some kind of action. So it could be like interacting with a brand or listening to a podcast or something like that. There's like, you know, lots of products kind of entering the market space that do sort of similar things. And, you know, I always think back to like this LTV coin and this magic word that we used to have on the podcast. Like, Brian, you probably remember this, but like we used to do this magic word at every episode. So we'd say like, okay, today's magic word is, I don't know, pickles or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
you know, not pickles, but miners or like Bitcoin or, you know, transaction fees or whatever. And then you know, if you listen to the episode, you take that magic word, pop it into the Let's Talk Bitcoin website, and then you'd get some tokens as like proof of listenership. And like, this is such a, I mean, this was in 2014, and this was such a forward-thinking idea, and I think maybe it was just too early, you know, for how the market was evolving. But like
One of the things,
very innovative.
yeah, one of the things that I've like, for better, so I'm super experimental, as you guys know, right? Like, we did all kinds of stuff that was just absolutely ridiculous. Like, we built a whole token-powered content management platform, right? And content like expression platform that had tokens baked into it at kind of a base level in 2014. And so like, that was so fun to do. But the thing about it that I think is challenging around all this stuff is that there was this really brief period of time where all of this stuff was possible, but before it became obvious that there was so much money attached to it, and there was so much ability to do that. And, you know, we gave away that token explicitly because I was concerned that later on it would be something that would be used against us. And so, again, like, our token had an end of life in 2017 where it was retired and changed out for another token. Like, no projects do any of this stuff even today. So no, it's, again, like, the greatest privilege that I had in kind of all of this was being in a position where not only could I explore my ideas, but I could do so at scale with other content creators and with a community of a couple tens of thousands of people, you know, at a time before the money came in and just muddied the water. There's nothing wrong with the money, but it does complicate things in ways that they just weren't complicated when we were working on stuff. Our problems were that we were too early, but everything else I'm pretty happy with how we got right.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's interesting how the tokens changed everything. Like I mean, I remember like, you know, being very involved in Ethereum early on, and I was just like, okay, but so you're gonna build these apps on Ethereum, and at the same time you have all these, you know, issues with user experience and scalability and all that. And I was like, this is gonna take forever until you're actually gonna be able to build sort of consumer grade applications on that. And of course that's true, right? We still basically, even today, right, just sort of on the verge of being able to do that. But of course, what I totally did not see, and I think hardly anybody saw at the time, was how tokens just kind of accrue so much value even when there's little usage and the app isn't really there, and that it can then, you know, basically keep projects funded for years and years, building all kinds of stuff like before there's really product market fit. And I think that's, of course, for Ethereum was absolutely crucial, right? Otherwise, Ethereum would have died, right? Wouldn't have made it. And yeah, I think that was super interesting.
It's a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing in that if you're a visionary founder who really has something to build out, it means that you have a bit more time to get product market fit before you run out of cash. And the curse is that you have a bit more time, which means that you might not have that sense of urgency, right? And the way to resolve that is simply strive really hard to maintain that sense of urgency, even though you have the cash, right? And you know, if you're a startup founder, I mean, you guys all know this too. Cash is king, right? There's usually a harrowing point in the time of the startup where it's really, really tough to get through. So tokens actually really help to get you past that, right? And the good news is, you know, maybe it took a few years from the time of the ICOs to the stuff that got built, but think about from 2017 until 2020, 2022 now, a lot of the really visionary stuff did get built, right? That took a lot of infrastructure building and took a few years, but that happened because of, you know, there was enough funding that came and there was enough runway and roadmap, and it happened. And then of course there was all the scams and whatnot, but a lot of really great stuff did get built precisely because of the token funding.
Yeah, and of course you also have the situation, right, that if you have a good enough story and the token gets enough value, you can really keep this thing going of like having something you're working on that actually doesn't have any traction, any usage for like years and years and years, right? And even today, right, we still have projects that are like, you know, top 10, top 20 assets with billions and billions of market cap that basically have, you know, zero usage.
How many devs does Litecoin have now? Is it half a dev still? It's amazing.
Well,
I'm surprised some people haven't hijacked that yet.
I think that we learned a couple of things from it all, which is one, being early is really, really valuable because anything that comes after the earliest success point has to compete with all of the other things that want to displace it. And that's just in practice really, really, really hard to do. The other thing is that one of the challenges with the money is that, and this was especially true early on, I think it's a little less true today, although not entirely true, is that the value of what was raised appreciated so quickly that it made it so that people who were building stuff, yes, they could take their time, but they could also just do nothing. And that was fine too, as far as like the deal that they had made with people. And there are many early projects that fall into that bucket. And again, like I was involved with some of the early Ethereum stuff and wound up getting kicked out of the early Skype group chats. Because when we were talking about the pre-mine and stuff like that, right, the founder allocations and stuff, I was like, guys, this is just a bad idea. Like you're creating centralized problems, stuff like that. Not well received, exited from all of that. So, I mean, like, you know, like I think for all the good that was done by the funding mechanism, early on we thought about it as crowdfunding. We thought about it as a pure analog to taking a crowdfunding campaign, which has this indefinite period of time after you funded the thing before you actually have something that is a thing. And sometimes people just needed to, sell that because they no longer were in a position where they could have it. Sometimes people missed the campaign. And so adding tokens made a lot of sense there. But the money, when the money just stacks up so high, it just changes the incentive structure. And again, for every project that's out there that, really delivered on something that was interesting, I would argue that there's probably 100 projects out there that just took the money and did nothing, whether through, malicious intent, naivete, or whatever. Like the hit rate for that relative to money, I would consider almost all of it to be malinvestment that we just got lucky on a few times. So I don't know, man, the years have really made me quite jaded as far as just kind of the incentive structure as it all goes. But I am happy overall with kind of the way that things have gone and the fact that it's still around. Again, there were lots of scenarios where this got much more aggressive, much faster, and none of those really manifested, much to my pleasure.
So I know you guys have many guests, and with that, I will say thanks for having me on here, and thanks for having me on so many Epicenter episodes. I love this show. I listen to it all the time. It's really great to be a part of it, and congrats again on your 10-year anniversary.
Thank you, Trent.
Yeah, and looking forward to many more episodes with you, Trent.
Absolutely.
And we also have someone new on. Sebastian from Hopper just joined. Hi, Sebastian.
Hey, Friederike and team, and I guess happy birthday, everyone. And yeah, thank you for being my personal educator on this journey for almost 10 years. It's been invaluable. And, I just thought it's so weird because podcasts exist in all spaces, right? But in all spaces, you also have this competitor called universities. Nowadays, maybe there's some university stuff out there, but back when I joined, there were no universities. There was Epicenter was the only way how you could learn about crypto and not get scammed. Like the second part was kind of important. So yeah, that's been pretty valuable for me, at least.
When did you start listening to the show, Seb?
Actually, for me, I was thinking about it before. It was kind of hard to tell because I was talking to Muirhead a lot, who was, I always say, personally responsible for dragging me into this crypto rabbit hole. And then, Muirhead was telling me about this Epicenter thing. And I think it was in late 2014 that it became, I did kind of my weekly shopping. And my weekly shopping took exactly 2 hours, which was exactly the time to listen to 2 episodes. So that was good because I had quite some catching up to do. And that was when I started.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very long weekly shop.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's happens when you live in the countryside. But yeah, maybe it was also 2 hours because that's simply how long it took to listen to 2 Epicenter episodes.
Meher, how did you guys know each other? I didn't realize that Meher was the connection here.
Yeah, he was doing a PhD in Basel.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
It was the Basel connection, the Zurich
Basel
connection, and all the funny ideas that Meher had and many people had back in the days, and it all sounded kind of crazy, right? There was Bitcoin, and there was all these crazy ideas, and I also remember, I think Meher was the first person who I witnessed to be properly obsessed with something, and the first thing that I saw Meher being obsessed with was actually Maker. And there was this time when Meher would join all these calls and listen in about what's going on at Maker, and nobody could really find out what was going on because early on it was a bit obscure.
It still is very obscure.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few days ago, Sebastian and I were talking about how the LLMs would struggle at understanding the Maker code base. Maker and Urbit code bases are the hardest for LLMs. That's my claim.
But so it is for humans, right? So maybe LLMs are the way to make these kind of very funny code bases available to some other minds, except for the handful of people who coded it.
So I mean, you mentioned the episode that you like that was the first episode you listened to. I guess like this is interesting. I want to ask like Mihir and Frederica as well. What's your like most memorable episode that you listened to before you joined as a host? For me, I think it was like in 2017, like the one with Jimmy Song, and it just like explained like scaling wars 101. I think that was just like so helpful to just be like, okay, here's like anyone who needed like understanding scaling wars, I just sent them that episode because it's like, okay, it was a 1 hour just like obviously a somewhat pretty biased view, but it was a good explanation of scaling wars.
I hate listening to podcasts.
Good segue.
You heard it here first, guys.
I've never listened to an Epicenter podcast, I think.
I can't believe you waited 10 years to tell us this.
Maybe it's good you didn't say that earlier, Meher.
Looking for an opportunity to fit it in.
I go read the white paper. Now I go read the code base.
Wow.
The last podcast episode I remember hearing is a medical one, but I've never heard Epicenter, I think. Yeah.
No, you were listening to Epicenter like before you joined us, no? I think so.
That's what he told you.
That's what he told us. Yeah.
I mean, maybe I might have scouted like Epicenter. Okay. What's up or something. But Then listening.
Would
to
you
I remember-
recognize the jingle that plays in the beginning? Because you don't hear that as a host recording it. Would you recognize it, Meher?
So speaking of jingles, this will lead us to like the next trivia question here. Does anybody remember the title of the pilot episode?
I remember you were called Epicenter Bitcoin at the time.
This is true.
As I get
Drop
constantly reminded by every time I go to a Bitcoin conference, like people are like, I still like Epicenter, but you got sold out by dropping Bitcoin from the name. And I'm like, no, our Twitter handle still says BTC in it, so
So just one thing here. So I have here the first message that Meher sent us, and it was like, "Hi Brian and Sebastian, I love your show in interviewing style."
So you were listening,
Or just tailoring himself to get a job.
Yeah. No, he was proposing himself as a. So you were working on this Hyperledger. We were involved in this project called Hyperledger, which has nothing to do with the later thing called Hyperledger that ended up, this enterprise blockchain stuff. And it was some sort of, Meher, you'll be able to describe it more, but you were basically proposing us to do an episode about this. And I think that was like some point in 2015.
Well, that would have gone over better than. Well, I've never listened to your show before, but I'd like
And
to
I
come
hate
on
podcasts.
to talk about. Yeah, I hate podcasts. But I'd like to come on and talk about the project I'm working on. So, good job. That's an excellent approach.
So does anybody remember the name of the pilot episode?
No,
Well,
sorry.
Why don't we just play it then?
regulation.
Regulation, the future of it.
This is Epicenter Bitcoin, a weekly podcast about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. The pilot episode, recorded December 20th, 2013. Regulation and the future of Bitcoin. This episode of Epicenter Bitcoin is brought to you in collaboration with the Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast.
Who did that intro?
I think that was Seth.
That was my attempt at a radio voice.
Oh, wow. I would not have recognized you.
Yeah, I didn't recognize that it was you.
Yeah, I think
start all episodes like that now.
Yeah, that's right. And that was the theme music for the first couple of episodes. Yeah. I think when I go back and listen to myself from back then, I think my Canadian accent used to be much stronger for some reason. But yeah, that was the first episode, the regulation of the future of Bitcoin.
I have a semi-trivia question here. So at some point you guys started doing ads in the show, but these ads are typically not very, not very crypto scammy ads. Like, what were the worst applicants that you got for like doing ads on the show?
I mean, we got a lot of applicants for doing ads on the show. I mean, like I think during the ICO kind of like period, we were getting a lot of queries to do ads on the show. Does anybody remember our so Bogdan, who does social, our community and sales, is commenting and saying don't even ask. But our first sponsor was Shapeshift, and I mean this was Shapeshift before Eric Voorhees was even
was it?
out.
I think
as easy as putting on your slippers. I remember that.
Maybe I'm wrong here, but I think the first sponsor was Fairlay.
That's right. Sorry, yeah. You're right. So it was Fairlay, the first one. Yeah.
What is Fairlay?
Yeah.
Fairlay was basically his prediction market.
Yeah.
That it was like by Martin and Stefan, right?
Yeah.
Who, of course, founders of co-founders
Wait,
of Gnosis
there was pre-Gnosis?
Yeah,
that was pre-Gnosis. So
Oh, wow.
On
This is
Bitcoin.
a centralized
Stefan-
site, as opposed to a protocol.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
Martin-
Gnosis connection goes way back then.
Martin actually met
Wow.
Joe at a Bitcoin meetup in New York, and he was telling him about Fairlay, and Joe said, "This sounds cool. Why don't you join Consensus and build the same thing on Ethereum that's not live yet, but it's going to be live soon, and it's going to be awesome." This is how Martin and Stefan became employees 2 and 3 of Consensus.
Wait, and Fairlay is still running? I'm looking on the site right now. It says it has
Is
like
it?
32 Bitcoin of volume in the last 24 hours.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it
thought
was sold
dead.
at some point.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's
You guys
so
never got
cool.
the
Wow.
the cloud miners were always the ones that most got in my that was the worst advertisers, right? Because the cloud miners were almost always scams, because they'd just be like, basically they would just run a Ponzi scheme, but then they would be like, no, we're putting your money into buying hardware, and then now you're going to get this yield from the hardware. I think eventually some of them came out that were better, but the first couple of years when everybody wanted to do mining, that was like, these were the people pre-ICO who had money to spend on marketing because they didn't actually have a product most of the time behind it, and everybody wanted it. So that was my memory of the worst.
I remember getting some queries also, like talking to some cloud mining folks, and I think Brian, you were like, no, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean the issue was even when the cloud mining thing was like honest or something, that generally, you'd basically pay some amount in dollars to then buy some amount of hash rate over some time, like a year or 2 years and stuff. And then if you sort of calculate like how many Bitcoins you got from that, generally you're always better off just like buying the Bitcoin up front instead of putting in this money to, buy the stream of Bitcoin over time. So it was always like, this is like under what, there's always like no scenario in which you'd actually be better off doing this cloud mining thing, but so somehow they could still like sell it.
Everybody wanted to do it. That's
and
why.
I remember sometimes they say, well, but you can, you can sort of like maybe just bill it through your company and say it's like cloud expenses, and then you keep the Bitcoin out of the company, or, basically some kind of, scammy approaches that maybe made it make sense. But yeah, so I think.
I remember for me, like, it wasn't the cloud mining, but I remember one of my early exposures to Bitcoin was with like, 21 or were they called 21 back then? I think. Yeah. They were like pitching like, oh, here's like this like Raspberry Pi that you're gonna like plug in, and like your toaster is gonna be mining and everything.
Yeah, the toaster was the craziest thing. It's like, how many hours a day does the average human use a toaster? That was one of my first moments when I was like starting to challenge what I hear, and yet it didn't make sense because there were all these very smart people, right? And they all were like they were speaking like very eloquently, and I'm wondering how many minutes I use a toaster in an average day. But yeah, anyway, I think that's part of the crypto education journey.
The water heater was always the better path.
I actually,
water heaters.
One of the first Bitcoin conferences I went to was in Amsterdam in like maybe October 2013. Like Vitalik was selling his Bitcoin magazine there, and then we had I met Adam back at that conference. It was his first Bitcoin event. Where I think he didn't have any Bitcoin at the time. Still, he was sort of like watching from the sidelines. But I had dinner with him and Manny Rosenfeld, who's also been on the show sometimes. He was kind of the original Bitcoin guy in Israel. And during the dinner, the two of them went on and this like crazy tangents. But I remember that was the one thing Adam was talking a lot about, that like at some point the Bitcoin mining economics is going to be that you're going to mine Bitcoin with your heating device at home and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, Sebastian, like to come back to the sponsors, I think one thing that we always tried to do is throughout the 10 years was also always be very, very mindful of the sponsors we got on the show, and like even in the beginning, like Brian and I would talk quite a bit about like whether or not a sponsor was good for the show, if we would use or recommend this product, and I sometimes joke about how like had we accepted all of the money that people were trying to throw at us during the ICO period, we probably would have made like quite a bit of money, but it just didn't feel right, and I think like it was the right decision to like just be very, very careful with sponsors, especially like in this space.
No, I mean, honestly, especially over such long time periods, I think you did an impressive job there at not selecting the FTXs of the world, right? It hasn't always been obvious. Let's also be honest about that, right? Like the most painful Ponzi's were the ones that were non-obvious. And kudos on that.
I mean, we did have one that was like, it was this Guppies thing. I don't know if you remember this, Brian. We did these ads.
I thought that's the thing that Stephen Peggy makes
dating
fun
app
of, and that's not an actual thing.
We didn't have him as a sponsor. I think we had him as a.
We did have him.
Yes.
We did have him
really?
as a sponsor.
Really?
Yes.
I remember that.
No. Sorry. No, it wasn't the Guppies. No. We had the Guppies on, but we didn't release the episode. But we did this thing called Gems, which was kind of like a social app. But it wasn't a scam. But they were doing kind of a sale ICO, and it failed. Yeah.
It was not a. It was. I mean, I
think I still have some.
Kind of an interesting idea. So.
Yeah, it was an interesting idea.
Guys, I know Adam has to dash. Adam, it's been so lovely to have you on for this. And
and maybe one day we can meet in person.
That's a distinct possibility. Guys, you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. Again, it's important. I'm happy to see that you're being so successful. So have a great next 10 years.
Thanks so much, and thanks for your role in all of this.
Yeah, I'll see you in 10 years. Bye, guys.
Ciao.
Cool, and we also have two new guests, Griff and Lefteris. Hang on, let me bring you guys on. Hey, guys.
GM.
Hey.
Wonderful to see you
Hey,
all.
hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Guys,
Cool.
I guess I'm going to head out. Now there's people who are funding public goods and supporters of privacy and local software.
before you go, I wanted to say something super juicy that I don't know if you ever knew this, and I don't know how Lefteris is even going to feel about me saying this, but back during the day, so obviously Lefteris and I were part of Slockit and the DAO and managed the DAO hack through the White Hat group, but the two of the top, or sorry, there was the top person that was predicted to be the DAO hacker back in the day, that we were told was actually you, Sebastian, and Meyer, and Andre Vilka. Back in the day, you guys were the top suspects.
I heard that. I heard that.
My hair?
Yeah,
Sebastian. I did not know you were.
I heard that
suspect
there was people accusing me of that, and I was like, guys, I actually wasted 5 ETH on like spamming the network, on running this thing that Stephen Toole was just sending this thing. Guys, run this. We need to like counterattack the network. And I wasted 5 precious ETH on it, which back then was way less money than it is nowadays, obviously. So yeah,
it was a good cover story. It was a good cover story. No.
Is it still a live hypothesis, or is it dead because we know who the hacker was?
I think it's.
Yeah, that's a good question. But when I first met Sebastian, I think that this is what you asked me, right? Like, why the heck would when we met in person in Friedrichshain in Berlin, he asked me. So, some people said that I'm the DAO hacker was from what was even the company name?
Validity Labs.
Validity, yes.
From us back in the days,
Yeah, I don't remember where the theory came from, but there was a theory.
Yeah,
I want to say it was like it was one of the exchanges. They said that somehow some gas money was connected to Validity Labs.
That's possible, but yeah, that's funny actually. It's really funny. Thanks for bringing that up.
But you're also in good company, because Alexei was also the other suspect, right? Alexei Akunov. So
I remember I've heard those theories before.
I never heard Alexei being the.
No, I think Alexei was the first to post about it on Reddit.
Yeah, he posted like something funny's going on, like the contracts are being drained or something, and
Yeah, and he's like, at the time, like the amount of people who like knew the EVM well enough to find it, a much smaller set than it is today, and Alexei was definitely like in that set. So
awesome, great. Anyway, awesome to bring up good stories.
So Sebastian's claim to fame, not the DAO hacker.
Not the DAO hacker, exactly. Anyway, thank you so much for having me on, and all the best for everyone involved. See you around.
Thanks, Sebastian.
So after accusing him of stealing $1 billion,
no, it was just
that was a very nice start in the conversation. Hey, by the way.
Well done.
I remember the first time I met Sebastian. It was like we were at a conference, and it was me, Jordi, and Lefteris, and we're all talking to him. It was like, oh my god, we're talking to the DAO hacker. It's so awkward.
I wouldn't have thought to be Sebastian to kind of be the person who kind of gives off like this super villain vibe, but yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't. So actually, it wasn't Sebastian. It was, and there was no villain kind of thing. It was another younger guy from Validity Labs, and it was Poloniex that suggested that. I don't remember his name, but a particular guy who was talking to Stefan Toal, and but it was pretty fucked up. Like it's in the Cryptopians, the book that in Shanghai after the hack, the guy that was suggested as being the DAO hacker by Poloniex was in DevCon 2 in Shanghai, and he talked to me, and I was like, oh my god, I'm talking to the guy that supposedly was the DAO hacker, and he was saying, yeah, well, the DAO hacker probably also feels very bad for what he did because he just got into the situation. It was very difficult, and for him, I was like, oh my God, it's him! It has to be him! Look at how he's defending the DAO hacker. But yeah, in the end, it was all just stuff in people's minds. Even though, as was mentioned before, who is a DAO hacker? We just have this other theory that Laura posted in the book, but well, it's not possible to prove anything with 100% certainty, right? So I guess we will always remain with this question.
Yeah, when you guys mentioned Poloniex, I can see why. So because like the DAO hack happened, and the first thing, like when I came to know of the DAO hack, I actually sold a large chunk of my ether on Poloniex. So maybe it's like that. That might have triggered them to have such an hypothesis. Yeah.
Yeah, so the hypothesis was pretty simple, that they had taken a huge short position that was being built over the days that the hack was happening, and that they executed it right after the hack. But let's be honest, like this is extremely weak evidence, and if I remember correctly, the price movement, it was really a time to short. If I didn't know anything about trading back then, but now that I see how trading works, I mean, it had just doubled in price in a week or so. So I guess it's a sorter's paradise. So just from that, saying that okay, these guys must be it. Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know. I like it better when the identity is a mystery. I feel like the DAO hacker is like, it's on like Satoshi, like the DAO hacker, like he's like core anons of crypto history. Like it's just better for it to remain faceless.
Well, the DAO hacker did prove that there's a distinction with like code is law and social consensus is law. So important distinction.
Yeah, that's a very big contribution to the ecosystem by the DAO hacker.
I mean, my DAO hack story, which is I was barely involved at the time, but I was just really into Bitcoin at the time, and I was at a hackathon that summer in 2016, and then I was telling my friend, I was like, hey, I heard about this like Ethereum thing. Like I heard you can like build applications and stuff on top of it. Like, we should check this out. I mean, because we were like Bitcoiners only at that time. And so, at this hackathon, we open up Reddit and the entire like page is just talking about like the DAO hack and like, oh, the world is burning. Like you have to fork the chain. And we were like, yeah, this community is crazy. This like, what is this? Like this is some bullshit. And so we like turned it off, and I like didn't look at Ethereum again for like another year.
Yeah, you were saying before that you were an ETH Classic guy.
I was an ETH Classic guy for a while. I like the code is law and all that. So yeah. Or okay, I guess my more specific stance was that I think it was unethical for the Ethereum Foundation to like leverage its ownership of the Ethereum trademark to declare the fork to be Ethereum. My take was that the classic chain should have kept the name Ethereum and the ticker, and then the fork chain should have a new name.
Yeah, I'm surprised that more things weren't built on Ethereum Classic, like really sketchy things, like a dark market, or it's like all of a sudden you had this chain that's like, oh yeah, hey, this is clean, no one's gonna mess with this. Okay, like let's do illegal things. Like it never happened. I feel like crypto has in general this like really like nefarious outlook, or people think that it's so bad, but the real builders they really don't build bad things. I mean, there was a huge opportunity there.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was part of my thesis on ETC as well, but never panned out.
Yeah, even the like the criminal smart contract paper, the assassination markets, all of these dystopian ideas that I've come across have actually never been built. And yeah, it's an interesting observation about actually humanity, that actually most of us are either trying to build interesting things or are just trying to scam and just make a little money and just switch off. None of us are trying to do like the really evil stuff. Like, where are the Professor Moriartys of the world? Like, there's a serious lack of Professor Moriartys of the world, of the supervillains.
I mean, my thesis would be here also that, if you wanted to build like, I don't know, dark market, I don't know, assassination market or something like that, well, privacy really has to be like completely impenetrable. And that's just not the case, right? And then I think, of course, you also see how hard it is to build anything anonymously. And I mean, Satoshi managed it, which is still like astonishing. That feels like, I mean, obviously the intellectual achievement of Bitcoin is like immense, but like him having been able to do this without leaking his identity in any way is also just like incredible. And I think people have not even when they tried, right? Mostly they fail, even on things like that don't get the kind of attention that Bitcoin did. So I still think in the end it has to happen, right? We will have to see things like dark markets that are like fully decentralized and all that stuff. But it's just, but you're right. I think it is surprising that it hasn't happened.
So you're like, it's down to logistics complexity of staying anonymous, and if that is solved, we'll have a lot of supervillains crop up.
I mean, of course, you're absolutely right that like most people don't do this kind of thing, right? Most people want to build like good things and stuff like that. But obviously, I mean, look at dark markets, right? Like they exist, right? And they keep making new ones and stuff, right? So, but I guess, well, I mean, for dark markets, I guess also like one of the main business models of dark markets seems to be the exit scam, right? Where people put in, Bitcoin or Monero or something into something that's basically a hidden centralized website, and then they can trade drugs, and then at some point when enough people have been using it, they just shut down the site and run away with the coins, right? And of course, if you decentralize it, actually, like, you can't do that. So I guess, but in the end, I would expect that thing to happen. And then of course, also something we did episodes about, right? There was the hackathon project called Dark Market by like Amiyataki at some point, and then they even ended up getting, well, there was a project Open Bazaar, right, that kind of took this and ended up getting venture funding from like Union Square Ventures and A16Z, like high, very reputable funds. And of course, I think the expectation was, that, okay, someone's probably going to like fork this and build a dark market, because that's obviously the biggest use case. I mean, the biggest market probably for something like that, at least in the short term. But yeah, never happened.
I do want to say though that I think we used to think that being anonymous is way easier than it actually turned out to be. So I think kind of back in the days of the DAO hack, people did assume they were anonymous to a large extent, which I think this kind of predated, like, all the Chainalysis like companies of the world, right? So, and then if you don't have very sophisticated block explorers and Nansen and whatever, it's really difficult to actually trace everything fully on chain. So I think there was a reasonable expectation that things would be private, and things still didn't get built. So maybe something more deep-seated here.
Yeah, I feel that privacy is probably it's really unfortunate that like we still don't have reasonable options for privacy in the space. I mean,
we'll get them. So this is something that I am absolutely bullish on for the next 10 years. So with ZK proofs and FAG and MPC, I think kind of we're going to get there.
Yeah.
And we also have Felix on now. So Felix is the late host. Hey, Felix.
Hi, thanks for having me, and congrats to 10 years to all of you guys. So happy that I was able to join as a host and take over some of the episodes that maybe Sunny would have done otherwise.
That's a burn, if I ever heard one. So yeah, Felix, what's your most memorable episode? I was looking earlier, and it looks like you've done. Well, you haven't done as much as Sunny, so you still have some catching up to do. But you've done something like 25 episodes, maybe 29.
Oh, wow,
what's been your favorite so far?
Yeah, I really like the DYDX episode I did with Brian. It was like just very, clean episode. We kind of covered everything. It was very, a great product, big success. And we kind of went over everything, inspiring like sort of story from Anthony and like sort of the journey of DYDX, and really enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, who would you like to get on in the next couple of months?
Oh yeah, I think Gito. I was trying to get Lucas on actually, but then they were way too busy with the airdrop and everything. And I guess it's kind of me being like in this staking niche of Epicenter. And I think now, I guess, many people are probably interested, how is Gito doing, like, because it got like much bigger, much more attention, right? And maybe like kind of a counter to this like sort of the Lido and Flashbots episode that we also had with Stefan and Vasily back then. So could be a very cool one. Excited for that one.
Yeah. Griff and Lefteris, I want to ask you, because I mean, you guys are like so OG into Ethereum and, like still very much into that space. Like how much do you pay attention? How much attention do you give to like other ecosystems, or like whether it's Cosmos or Solana, or like, maybe some of the stuff happening over on Polygon or some other ecosystems? Like, do you pay any attention at all to what's going on there? Or are you just like still very focused on Ethereum?
It's a Ethereum alignment question. I can smell it. I can smell it. Yes, it's a trap. For me, it's very difficult. Like so many different stuff pop up. It's impossible to follow. But I personally try to look at all the different ecosystems, but I can't even claim to know anything as well as I do Ethereum, which is kind of sad. Like, being honest, I look the most where I have interest in or a bug in. So if I have lots of tokens of something, I'm interested to see if if that bug is gonna be worth anything. And also because I'm doing Rotkey, I am trying to focus on everything that people ask for, which besides EVM chains would be Cosmos and Substrate. So these are our two biggest tasks, and then there is some people who want also Dfinity, and then Solana. But I don't know anything about Solana, though I would like to find more time. Like, it's also interesting. Like, I really like everything, but no time.
Yeah, I'm kind of like Lefteris. I mean, I definitely chase my bags. But also I follow more of like the regen space. So regen network, I follow relatively closely, and I'm always watching what's going on. And IXO and Cosmos also, was checking them out. But unless it's so, I'm like Solana. I haven't seen any regen projects on Solana. There probably are, but I don't know. But actually, Giveth is going to be one. We're going to integrate Solana so that you can donate on Giveth, because I think there's an opportunity there. So, there's not a donation platform that I know of there. So, hey, why not? I wish I followed Polkadot and the Web3 Foundation space early on, but I haven't seen a whole lot develop there. So mostly I follow in the EVM space because that's where I know people who can do cool things, and that's definitely where the regen space is. I'm very close with Polygon, and Optimism, and Arbitrum, and Public Goods Network, and all the L2s. So I consider all of that Ethereum, though. Like even Polygon. I mean, if it's EVM, Ethereum is the E, right? So I don't know if that should really count.
I agree.
Do you guys Lefteris talked about alignment earlier. Do you think that everything will converge to Ethereum, and basically like all of the other ecosystems will borrow security from Ethereum in one way or another, whether through restaking or mesh security or some other sort of like novel security mechanisms?
I do not. I do think that there is going to be a power law distribution, but I don't think that there will be like everyone uses Ethereum. That would just be dumb. Like, why would we centralize around that? We need diversity in the space. And I also just think there's enough incentives for challengers to always be there.
That's a very good question. It's very difficult to answer because Ethereum has amazing staying power. I would not have imagined that it's so easy. So many things are built around Ethereum, and even though other ecosystems really come up with novel ideas and pretty interesting concepts, we seem to still do stuff on the EVM, though it has its flaws. And I don't know why we seem to just focus on it a lot more than anything else. Like, yeah, about restaking, I really don't know enough to even give an informed opinion. But from the problems that we have with Ethereum staking, some were suggesting that we can do something that I think both Cosmos and the Substrate ecosystem does. I don't remember the name, but that you are validating your stake to someone. That probably has a name, I just don't know it, which you cannot do in Ethereum. You have to either stake on your own or do the liquid staking stuff, right? What's the name of that thing in Cosmos and
Delegation.
Substrate? Okay, yeah, that is a good name for delegating your stake. Yeah.
I mean, the liquid staking stuff in Cosmos, or what? Or
just delegation to validator, the concept that doesn't exist in Ethereum, basically, right?
Yeah, this. So, for example, when I got my TI, I delegated it to Larry someone for staking, right? And with Substrate, it's exactly the same thing. Like, if you don't want to run your own validator, you have to you have this option of delegating the stake.
Yeah,
Sonny, you were you made a bit of a face there while I was asking that question, like maybe you had something to add here, which I'm sure you do.
I made a face.
Yeah.
On what? The question about like ETH alignment, or just?
Yeah, or maybe when Griff was saying that things wouldn't align with Ethereum.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think Ethereum has done a good job of building this community around it. I've just not always been a believer in like multipolar systems. I think that like, Solana has built quite a bit of a cultural center. I think Cosmos has grown a cultural center. At the end of the day, I honestly just don't. I don't know. I think I think from a cultural standpoint, I don't know. I just find my maybe just like by nature of when I got involved with the space, I just like in my heart, I just like feel like a Bitcoiner. I don't know why. Like if I tell anyone, it's like, and I feel like part of it's like when I just go talk to like friends and stuff, it's like if I try to pitch them on crypto, people who are not like drinking the Kool-Aid, right? I feel like I can explain Bitcoin so easily and they like get it, right? Like nothing, very little else is like easy to explain. Like it's like so hard to explain like ETH. Like I don't think, and I think people just start asking questions that I can explain Bitcoin really well, and I can explain like certain DeFi apps really well, right? I mean, obviously I can explain osmosis really well and like what the value prop here is, right? But like, you know, if you try to ask me to like pitch ETH to a normie, I actually don't know how to like do that. So I don't know. That's kind of I'm a believer in Bitcoin and I'm a believer in like applications.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a really fair stance because Bitcoin has like a very clear application and it is its own application effectively of like decentralized money and it does it really well. But like the other like Ethereum and Solana and Cosmos, I mean, it's just you're talking to normies about why MongoDB is better than another database framework, and it shouldn't matter.
Also, why MongoDB is a $500 billion product.
Yeah, I exactly. I think in the end, these different products will all exist because users don't care. Our tribalism is in the crypto space, and that's like super niche. And what's going to win is the applications that are built on top of it that are useful.
Yeah.
I guess the problem is that you're trying to compare Bitcoin, which is more like you call it an application, right? It's easy to understand, while Ethereum, EVM, etc., it's a platform to build apps on. So it's much harder to explain to a normie, probably.
Cool. Thank you guys for being here, Griff and Lefteris. I know, Lefteris, you're joining us from the middle of nowhere, as can be seen by your very blocky picture, and I can vouch for the fact that Lefteris usually doesn't look so pixely. So thank you both for coming on, and it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for allowing us to participate in your 10th year anniversary birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, guys. Enjoyed you guys since the very beginning. Thank you for doing all this work.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, guys.
Okay, time for our next guests, right? So we have Anna and Sam. Hang on, let me bring you guys on.
Hello.
Hi. Hey.
Hi. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
So just brief introductions here. So Anna Rose, who is the host of the ZK podcast, also a very popular podcast and one of my favorites. And Sam, who I met a couple of weeks ago in Istanbul, and he had such a crazy story about like his experience listening to Epicenter that I just wanted to get him on to tell that story here on our live stream. So yeah, thanks for coming, guys.
Cool.
Nice to be here. My first podcast ever.
Oh.
Nice.
There are so many hosts. When I first joined, I thought there was like a ton of guests, but no, are you guys at 6 now?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, 7 if you count Sunny. Sunny is a sort of, depending on the weather host. But yes.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, Sam, tell us a bit about yourself and
sure.
When you started listening to the podcast.
I've worked in TradFi for about 20 years, so I've just gone, I guess you would say, crypto native. I think the only other one of you that I've met in person may be Sunny. We actually met. You were on my flight back from ECC. We chatted in line. But I started. So I got into space right around when Federica joined as a co-host. I started the first macro fund that could trade liquid crypto, and so my background is in TradFi and macro trading. Kind of from like an economics perspective. And I traded the first option on Ethereum back in 2018 when it was or 2019 when it was at like $120. And most recently, I ran crypto for one of the largest and oldest global macro funds in the world. And then during that period, we invested in Scroll, and I have now joined full time as an advisor to them.
Congrats. Yeah. So what's this? Tell the story about I think it was you said you were listening to the episode with Eli Ben Sassoon.
Yeah, so I was telling I was telling him that I oftentimes listen to podcasts when I'm in the shower. And Federica recently interviewed Ellie, and I was literally obviously, and I'm listening to it on my phone, which I have put up like this, and obviously the sound is not super loud. You've got the water and everything, and she's asking him this very delicate question, which I'm a bit of an ETH maxi, just as a disclosure. And there is some suspicion within, I think, parts of the Ethereum community about how aligned maybe Starkware may be, and she's asking him this question about where they're posting the data, and he goes, "Well, we're posting it to this data availability committee, blah blah," and she goes, "So you have another L1?" And I literally was like, I was like shampooing my hair, and I stopped, and he goes, "Well, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I guess so." And she goes, "Oh, that's very interesting." And then I was waiting for him. This is where I think it might get a little bit spicy, but I was waiting for him to then turn around and be, if he wanted to snipe at her, and be like, "Well, don't you work for another Alt L1 as well? Gnosis? Is it Gnosis and Alt L1, another L1?" But it didn't go in that direction. But it was the first time I've heard anybody really challenge him on this, and I thought it was very interesting to me, and I relayed the story. He thought it was funny because I was in the shower at the time.
So do you take 90-minute long showers, or the full episode, or?
Well, I think it sprung out because I used to like to go to the sauna and the steam room and take a lot of reading. There's no distractions, there's no TVs, you can't use your phone, right? And so it's just this this deprivation. And after COVID, during COVID, obviously all the gyms shut down and whatever. And we're during that COVID period and afterwards, it's like you're just surrounded by your screens or televisions or your phone. And so I think the shower became this deprivation place where if I was in the shower, I'd put on something where I could just listen, and your mind's a lot, the whole shower thought thing. So anyways, I think that's where it came from, but I'm not sure.
Federica, do you remember this episode? Do you remember this what he's talking about?
I remember it was not so long ago, right?
No, it was actually during Paris. That's when I listened to it, during ETHCC.
Okay.
But you may have.
It wasn't very long ago, but I don't actually remember this specific question. But kind of, I'm all for kind of putting things very plainly. So it's yeah.
But I have to say, I recommend Epicenter. So I've been listening. Maybe I started listening 2016, 2017. But I listen routinely since then, and I refer new TradFi people trying to learn about the space to listen to Epicenter, and to also, when they're trying to learn, they'll ask me about a project or something, and I'll say, "Why don't you go find the Epicenter podcast with that project from maybe it was years ago?" But you guys have become almost like a reference material, and I think, by the way, I'll give credit to Anna. I listened to her show religiously as well.
Oh. Thanks.
Certainly in the ZK space, you play that role. But for the TradFi people, that's a little. The knowledge level is extremely low in TradFi. I can't emphasize this enough. A little bit to Sunny's point, the understanding of what Ethereum is, for example, should the level of understanding is that it's a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin with some utility, and that's really it. And so, I actually think that Epicenter plays a really important role. And from an education and introduction standpoint, and I use it personally as a kind of an encyclopedia of the space, but I refer TradFi people as well to use it that way.
Well, thank you. Well, I guess if we encounter people from TradFi that listen to the podcast, I'll ask them if they come from Sam. Cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on and telling that story. And yeah, thanks for being a loyal listener.
Yeah, I guess good segue to the other podcast. There was no.
Yeah.
When did you get started with CK? It's been a long time as well, no?
Yeah, so I was thinking about your questions of like when did I first hear about Epicenter? For sure it's 2017 for me, probably before we started the show. I know that you guys were a lot bigger than us back then. You were like we were just like for our friends in the office. It was very, very small. But I know I was for sure a listener by DevCon 2017 in Cancun, because Brian, that's when I voice recognized you on a bus and like weirded you out and went over and was like, "Are you Brian from?" Like I did that.
Yes, I remember.
Like,
I remember.
Weird
Yeah.
Girl, like go away. And like you had nowhere to go. It was like this bus that was taking us from a place to another place that was like not moving. Anyway, but yeah, that was for sure. So by then, obviously, I'd been listening for a long time, and I was also thinking about what were those guests that like I remember. I don't know that I listened to that would have changed something, and I have a few that I picked out. One was for sure like Matter and Alex G. I think I had already had him on my show, but I think it was like a phase shift in the project that I learned about through Epicenter. I remember the episode with Dankrad in 2021. For some reason, that one stands out. And you guys have covered Urbit often, which I still don't understand. But I always listen to those ones.
Brian, this is your chance.
Yeah. Tell us more about Urbit.
I've listened to that one, and I don't understand it either. So.
I can explain it. I can explain it.
Brian,
Okay, no, let's have Sonny explain it.
Okay, yeah, Sonny, what is it?
Okay. Do you guys know Secure Scuttlebutt? You familiar with Secure Scuttlebutt?
Yes.
It was a DAG-based social network. Instead of a blockchain, you peer-to-peer gossip with other nodes, and eventually you have this eventually consistent view of the network.
We also did an episode with them.
Did an episode,
Dominic.
yes.
Yeah.
I did too, actually.
It does not solve a double spend problem.
Episode 290.
But because it's a social network, what is a double spend, right? It's just you told us one person you like to post, another person you dislike to post, like whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. Okay. Put Secure Scuttlebutt on the side for a second. Bitcoin wanted to build this thing, like decentralized money project, and in order to do this, invented a new decentralized data structure called a blockchain, right? And it's like, okay, really fast finality, or relatively fast finality, and solves this double spend problem. Ethereum comes along and is like, oh, cool decentralized data structure. What if we put a generalized VM on top of that and have it run arbitrary applications? I think the best way to think of Urbit is take Secure Scuttlebutt, the decentralized data structure that is Secure Scuttlebutt, and it's like, why are we only running a single social network platform on top of this? What if we actually instead slapped a generalized VM on top of this and made it so okay, here's a platform that people can build peer-to-peer applications, right? So you have a bunch of people right now trying to build decentralized social networks, right? You have Farcaster and Blue Sky and everyone, right? And everyone's building specialized P2P networking. Most P2P dApps don't need a blockchain, right? You don't need global state for for a lot of social applications. Urbit's take is hey, instead of building custom P2P stacks for everything, and let's build one OS, and then people can deploy applications on top of that. That is Urbit for you.
And this scuttlebutt, this gossip part, is that at the core of Urbit's architecture? This sort of the way.
Yeah, to be clear,
it's not communicating everywhere. There's no global state. It's just local.
Yes.
Closer. Okay.
Yes. Another way I think of for Cosmos people to think about it is, imagine everyone had their own personal CosmWasm chain. I had Sunny chain, you had Anna chain, and then we all use IBC to talk to each other. And if I wanted to build a messaging app, I would write the CosmWasm contract for it, or the smart contract for it, and I would deploy it on my chain and on your chain. And then we send messages over IBC between our chains.
Okay, but only there, kind of not.
If you don't need to broadcast
everywhere.
Global state everywhere.
Okay.
We need Sunny back to do more episodes. I think maybe this is kind of the petition here.
Yeah, another sort of way of explaining Urbit is the idea that it's a sort of system that's where the idea is that computation is focused around the personal server, right? So that you have sort of your server and all of your data on your applications live on your server, and then it's like networked with other servers, right? So like an application developer develops their app, it gets shipped to everyone's server, and then there's like an identity system, peer-to-peer messaging, and then it has some of this kind of blockchain features, this server, right? In that you can prove all this, it's like deterministic, right? And you can always prove the state. If people are interested in it, so at Chorus One, we've been sort of building a Urbit hosting product. And you can go to redhorizon.com, and then you can onboard onto Urbit, and we give you like an Urbit ID, and you can try it out. It's like super simple. You can be on there in like 2 minutes, and then you can try it out and let us know what you think.
So maybe that's the trick of Urbit. You gotta try it to understand it.
Yeah, definitely. That helps. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's redhorizon.com. So RED and then horizon HORIZON.com.
Super nice. Cool. Anna and Sam, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on with us for quarter of an hour. So it was super nice.
Nice
Have
seeing all of you.
wonderful holidays.
Thank you for
Yes. And congrats again, everyone, to
Congrats.
the 10th anniversary. It's fantastic.
So now we're only missing AI Epicenter host side to like
Soon.
catch up to you.
Yeah, let us know when you have your 10. When is your 10-year coming
So
up? It's
we're-
also not that far, no?
No, well, we just did I did 300th episode with a bit of a look back. That just came out a few weeks ago. But yeah, we started, officially like weekly, it was beginning of 2018. So what am I at?
First episode?
6 years almost?
Oh, okay.
The first episode was in 2017, but it was like on SoundCloud, and then we published it elsewhere. But yeah.
Okay, so 3 more
2018.
years or something like that.
Yeah.
2-3
There you
years.
go. Well, I hope I can invite you guys for that.
I would love to
Yeah,
go.
we will definitely
First
come.
5 years are the hardest. You're past the hump.
It's amazing that you guys stayed with it for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much.
That's the
Sam.
secret sauce, is just keep going. Don't quit. Anyway.
We hope we can continue providing you with shower content for another 10 years.
Nice.
Well, I've got to break it. I can't get through a full episode, so it scales well with the shower. Because I get about 3 showers per episode.
you do take long showers. I'm sure your water supply company is really happy with this.
Yeah, in the U.S., the incremental water, it's very cheap. So again,
yeah.
And Anna, we'll have to do another crossover episode at some point.
True. I was listening to that the other day. There was I don't know if people know, it was recorded. We kind of made a thing of it. We released it on both of our channels on YouTube.
Yeah, from television.
2019. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Well, see you
See you
folks. Have a
soon.
good rest of your session.
Thanks.
Okay. And we have Jordi. Hey.
Hello, everything. Congrats, guys.
Hey, Jordi.
Thank you.
Hey, Jordi.
I remember when, at the beginning, very beginning, when I started to be in the community in the DAO, and I think it was the first podcast that I heard about Bitcoin by the time, and it was in 2015 or something around there. So yeah, I'm just still there in the top. So that's I think that's a good job, guys.
So Jordi, how long have you been in the space now?
I was I was reading the Bitcoin paper in 2013, but actually I was trying to do smart contracts by the time, and you very soon you discover that Bitcoin was not very much prepared. I mean, all the scripting language was very limited, and even most of the codes of the opcodes just didn't work by the time. It was very, very, very frustrating. Everything super slow and just abandoned somehow. And it was until 2015 that I discovered Ethereum in a very strange way. I mean, because I was just having another job and a lot of work. And I remember that in 10 minutes, I was able to just create a Solidity smart contract. And what I was trying to do in 2013 was so easy in 2015 that I just get engaged. And from there was like, for me, was like a drug. I mean, just reading, understanding, discovering, just learning all these, just what's behind the technology, behind the, I mean, you just discover the community, discovered by the time was the DAO and people just building around, and there was a bunch of people just trying to develop things. And remember, I mean, talking with people from Swarm, and where all these dApps start happening. And from a developer perspective, I think Ethereum was it was incredible, because it's like you have like a new toy, and then you can start building a lot of decentralized things on top of that. I mean, Bitcoin was fine. I mean, it was great, but it's just money transfer. You just, okay, which is important, but it's just that. And Ethereum opens a space to these decentralized applications. And from the developer perspective, this opens a huge world, a new world. And for me was, I mean, this is where I entered in. And I'm still here. I mean, I'm still learning. So yeah, that's how I entered. Ryan.
Hey guys, how you doing? Good to see everybody.
Hey Ryan.
We also have
Thanks
Ryan
for
Zurrer who's
dropping
joining
by.
us now. This was actually kind of your idea. Like when we had you on, I think it was last year. You mentioned that we should do this. I don't remember if it was like on the podcast or like after the podcast, but then this is like we sort of ran with it, and yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know. Like I find Epicenter to be this compelling kind of historical record of the space, right? Where there are moments in time where, you know, the name was kind of very opportune because it was the center of the discussion in very critical moments. So, for example, like the DAO hack, which obviously you know Jordi sat at the eye of the storm of and was so critical in recovering the funds and all the work that he did in that, as well as the other things with like the parity wallet hacks and so on and so forth. When people needed critical information about what was going on, either prior to the DAO hack, because I think Vlad had like a warning podcast with you guys about it, and then it happened, and then Jordi saved it, or saved most of it, and then Jordi came on after. And like, if you wanted to stay up to date with it, which I did because I deployed capital into it, Epicenter was the thing. And there has been these moments in time where Epicenter has sat at the center of the conversation of our space, which has been really critical. And so yeah, I'm super happy that you guys are doing this.
That chapter, that thing was Vlad and Emin Gunsirer talking about the all the DAO flaws and all the problems and what to do, and the DAO hack didn't happen yet. I mean, it was in that moment. That was
It was like 2 weeks before. Yeah.
That was. But for me, I mean, that was personally, I think that moment was the most interesting moment on the DAO history, because it's like, okay, people realized that there was like a bunch of money there, and the smart contract was was very primitive, and there was a lot of problems. People start looking at that very seriously, and I mean, a lot of flaws just happened. Again, this was just before the rentrancy attack happened. I mean, this was just before that. And this episode, I mean, this when the mean and Blood just took a little bit the leadership of the community and saying, hey guys, this is cool, but here there is a lot of problems that we need to solve and we need to fix and we need to talk about. And I mean, I think that was one of the important moments from the history of the DAOs at that point. And I mean, that specific chapter with Blood and the Mean, I think is one. It was an important. It really. And the people really understood at that point how incredible could be the DAOs, but at the same time how difficult it is to build them. And I mean, we are still not there yet. And that chapter explains a lot of things.
The number of reentrancy attacks that happened in 2023 is frankly embarrassing for our industry. Like the fact that we still are not getting it right as an industry is like, come on, guys, like it's 2023. Like we gotta get this shit sorted out here. But I will never, for the rest of my life, forget. I actually had fallen asleep listening to, I think, that episode. I was living in Rio de Janeiro at the time. Woke up the next morning, which was a Saturday, and was at the beach with my girlfriend at the time. And I got this call from Alex Van de Sand and Jordi Baylina, neither of whom I knew at all. And they're like, we need your DAO tokens because like we're going to do the same attack that the guy did. And this Catalonian has devised the attack just from like observing the attack going on. And I kind of like, sort of slapped my girlfriend on the butt who was laying beside me. I was like, hey baby, we got to go home. I got to send this Spanish guy some tokens. And away we go.
I remember in that call. I mean, I was nobody there. I mean, nobody knew me, and I mean, I deployed. I mean, some attack, just trying to the DAO attack, and somebody. I mean, some whale just sent me like I don't know, like 200K or 300K, which was a huge amount of money, without even knowing me. And without understanding and just to recover. I mean, for me it was like that moment was like in a movie. I mean, it's I couldn't believe what happened. I mean, just a random guy that I don't even know his name and just sent me some funds to recover to my address and well, it was a crazy. I mean, if you think if you put it in perspective, it was like everything crazy. But all that time, I mean, this was just the beginning. Another guy just sent like after recording all the funds of the DAO, just sent like $500,000 again back to the DAO, and then just trying to record. I mean, it was like a crazy moments by the time.
It's one of these things that. And Epicenter is really very emblematic of this, right? When you meet people who come into the space and spend, say, like a year in crypto, they always come back to you and they're like, oh my God, like it's been so crazy. Like so much has happened. Like I can't even believe like this is wild. And you're like, actually, no, like it's just kind of always like this. Like it's just sort of, every year is just as wild, not more, not less, but just absolutely wild in its own unique way, which is why, crypto's a strange addiction, right? It's something that you couldn't really decouple yourself from, even if you wanted to at this point. And so that's interesting. One of the questions that I've always asked myself, I remember the first episode I listened to from you guys was the predictions of 2014. Because I was kind of like, I was mining at the time and I was like, okay, like what else is out there that's like beyond just like mining?
This was episode 1, by the way.
What was it?
I mean, so there was the pilot episode, and then our predictions for 2014 was the first numbered episode. It's like episode 001. It came out in January. Yeah.
But when it became a regular thing for me was actually almost a year later with the Vitalik episode. because I was fortunate enough to see Vitalik's first ever presentation of Ethereum in Toronto at Anthony Diorio's place, and seeing his evolution as a kind of like an entrepreneur and a presenter over the sort of like 9 months of that moment in time, where like his slides were all just like code base. He's like, that is an insurance contract, and that is an options contract. And we're like, what is this guy doing? To the conversation that he had with you guys, where you guys were able to really like kind of pull out a more human side of him. And then shortly thereafter, from the Vitalik episode, it went from Epicenter Bitcoin to Epicenter. And it kind of felt like you guys were the defining group that had realized that there was more beyond Bitcoin. And this is like, this is 2014, right? Like it's still, Bitcoin maximalism wasn't even a term at the time, right? Because everybody was a Bitcoin maximalist, unless you were like really a scammer and you were into Namecoin or something like that. What caused that move for you guys? Like what caused the opening of the door that like, hey, there's a lot of cool things here going on in crypto, and we should embrace all of that rather than continue on this narrative around what Bitcoin did last week?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. I mean, I think for me, and I think Sebastien was similar in that we were just like curious about stuff happening, right? I mean, even when you got into Bitcoin, or I got into Bitcoin, right? You already had, alternative alt chains, where there was, there was saying, okay, can we like innovate on Bitcoin a bit? Do we decrease the block time? Or, you had things like Peercoin that was trying to do some proof of stake like thing. And of course, you had the things building on top of Bitcoin that were trying to do like applications, right? So counterparty, Mastercoin, coins. Yeah. And then the Ethereum white paper, right? That came out in December 2013. It's basically right when we started the podcast, and we were pretty much immediately like, oh, this is interesting. So I think we did our first Ethereum episode. This was like very start of 2014. I mean, we got some, people on that, I don't remember who we got on.
You had Gav on really early. Like I remember a Gav thing where that was the first time where I was like, okay, this guy's smart. This guy knows what he's doing, and it's not just Vitalik.
But the name change was actually a bit later, right? But I think, it was similar in Berlin.
Name change was 2016. So I've got the article here.
Oh, was it that late?
Yeah.
But we were doing all kinds of podcasts like from 2014 on. I think in terms of like doing other topics, I think you're totally right. We were there already. And
you were the launch moment, I felt like, for the narrative around what Protocol Labs had built beyond IPFS. Like I think it was the first time that Juan Benet discussed Filecoin publicly. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was an amazing episode. I remember that was episode 100. We had Juan on, and he talked about IPFS and Filecoin and stuff, and that was really a fantastic episode.
That was again, as a capital allocator, like these were really seminal moments for me. Like I left that episode with a mission to go to DevCon 2 and just like hound Juan until he just like allowed me on the cap table. I was like, I am going to like figure something out to convince this guy that I am like good to be around. After listening to that, so it's great. The longevity is important. In dialectic, we talk all the time, every single day. We talk about the importance of compound returns, right? The strongest force in the universe is compound interest. This is true in nature with the golden ratio. It's true in finance with compound interest. It's true in relationships. It's true in skill development. And this like compounding that you've had now over a decade, which is an eternity in crypto, is really valuable. I mean, it's been pivotal to my career. I happen to be skiing with my family in my favorite ski chalet here. in Switzerland, which has only been enabled because of the alpha that I've been able to accrue from Epicenter.
Well, there's a lot of credit, but yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
This is a story I've heard many, many times. Well, my whole family's in here. Jeez, my mom and my dad are both watching.
Yeah. The first we did the pilot episode, I was also in Switzerland in an apartment in the mountains, just before Christmas. It was like in the middle of snow. So
if you go back to like a point in time for you guys, how has the pod changed your lives? Right? Like obviously it's changed our lives in that we've gotten like a great, intelligent, open-minded, condensed information on a topic that we could like listen to, say, in the car, in the shower, or working out or whatever. But how has it changed your lives overall?
I mean, okay, I think it was, of course, like crucial, right? Like meeting all people in crypto. I mean, definitely investing in crypto as well. The first time I had kind of a job with a startup, and it was this company, Eras Industries, and we had them on the podcast, and then I applied and reached out to them, and the founder was a podcast listener, right? And then later, I think sort of Tendermint was also kind of connected with that, and then of course Muirhead was a co-host here, and then we started Course One together, and I think it's like so many times, right? It was really. Also through relationships, right, and through people meeting, through hosting podcasts that played it played an absolutely massive role, I think, in my life and in the last 10 years.
Yeah, same. I mean, before this, I was building websites and writing CSS for responsive emails, right? Like, I mean, not that building websites and responsive emails is not like something that people should pursue, but it's totally like changed my career path, changed my outlook on sort of like on the world, and sort of like learning about finance, learning about economics. So these are topics that I had very little knowledge about before starting Epicenter, and like just getting to talk to like incredibly smart people every week about all these topics that I thought were really interesting, right? That I was really passionate about. Have just like totally changed my outlook, and then of course enabled me to like start several companies. So like a lot of people know this, but I started this company called Stratum about 5 years ago that no longer exists, but was a crypto company, and now running a fund, right? I mean, like the fund, Interop Ventures, would not exist had it not been for the time I spent like just building a massive network of people in the space. So yeah, it's been absolutely life-changing for me too.
It's also humbling, right? Because kind of like
Totally.
every other week or so, we kind of get to speak to someone who's super smart and super passionate about something, and kind of really wants to see something through. And I think this kind of puts kind of like other things that kind of we as I mean, for all of us, this is kind of a side gig, right? So kind of we all have day jobs, and I think kind of this puts a lot of things into perspective. And I think to me that's been a wonderful experience.
By the way, is Jordi your most frequent guest? I think Jordi's had what, four episodes?
No, we talked about it before. The most frequent guests are.
Can you guess?
Trent McConaghy for sure. Trent, I feel like Trent's almost a co-host. And then from there, Jordi Baylina and maybe Vitalik. I don't know.
So 6 episodes is Vitalik, Emin Günserer, and then Trent. If you count this episode, it would have been his 6th. So he did like 5 full episodes and dropping in here. So I would say kind of, yeah, Vitalik, Gun, and then Trent.
Vitalik, Gun, Trent, and Jordi as your most popular, most frequent guests, like that's as good as a lineup as you're gonna get. Like talk about star-studded cast, right? Just a group of legends in this game.
Just I would like to explain before we leave, because it's so when I've always been in the episodes as a interviewer. I mean, always when I finish the interview with you is I get with the questions. I mean, those guys are doing the right questions. I mean, they are. So it's like I didn't feel fully comfortable. I mean, it's like, okay, these guys are going to the point, are going to the questions that are arguable. I mean, they're going to the values, and they're going deep to the project, to the thing that you are talking about. And this is very, very, very comfortable. And I think this is one of the secrets of this podcast. I mean, it's not when you are there, you are not just explaining random things to people that you go to the point in all the projects. And yeah, so that's you get the feeling when you get that, and that's why I think the people love to be here too. Because I mean, when you're in this with this cross and with this interviewer, is like, okay, you're asking. I mean, it's good. It's where you really put your thoughts and your what you are building or what you are doing okay, they put you the things on the table, and you need to explain and defend what you are doing. And I think this is amazing.
Oh, this means so much, Jordi, especially coming from you.
Especially coming from Jordi Baylina, that means quite a bit more. Yes, indeed.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I think one of the things, coming back to your question earlier about like how it's changed us, I think for me, one of the things that I've noticed is that doing the podcast has made me like a much better listener, and just the ability to like, I find myself, and my wife is like the first to complain about it, is like always asking questions, and and sometimes asking too many questions, but yeah. But
I thought you were going to say my wife's complaining that I'm a listener. I was like, my wife does not complain about that. Of all the list of complaints that my wife has, listener is not one of them.
but like asking a lot of questions, right? Like trying to get to the bottom of everything, and that's, I think, something that I've picked up from doing the podcast for Zurrer, is like asking question over question over question to get to the bottom of what people are doing or how things work, or
I'm trying to understand. The thing is that the point is, because I mean, you can make questions and so on, but it's like, no, you are trying to understand. You are trying to get to the point. You are trying to see what's the nullity that's happened here, or why this is important, or why this is really is done this way or this other way, or contrasted with different ways to do things. And this, I mean, I think this means more, means a lot. And I think, I mean, when for the people that's listening to this, I mean, they are learning, and they are understanding how the projects, and what's the point of the project, what's the point of what the people is building. And I mean, this is value that you are adding to the community. So this is so important.
Yeah. I've always felt that you guys ask the questions that, like, as I was listening as a capital allocator, you guys have asked the questions that a capital allocator should ask. And it's interesting that we've watched essentially all of you in some way become capital allocators in this space. And that now in retrospect seems obvious, because you've been asking the questions of a smart money capital allocator for a long time. And so you get good at it, and you start to get confidence in it. And that's been why the long form of your interviews, I think, have survived and thrived versus other podcasts that have sort of fanned out.
Well, my other podcast, The Interop, is basically just a forcing function for me to do DD on projects. I mean, to some extent, right? Like, I mean, they're more so. I mean, it's more than that, but it does also serve this purpose sometimes, and also to get a feel for how, like, for how the founder expresses themselves and sort of pitches their product and their project outside of a, you know, like Zoom call setting, right? In a more kind of like public facing setting. But yeah, Jordi, to come back to what you were saying earlier, you know, the asking the questions and trying to understand how things work, like for me was not always something that came naturally. Like in the first 3 or 4 years of doing the show, and this changed after some time, I was really coming to the podcast like trying to over prepare in order to give the impression that I knew more about the topic that I actually did, right? And it was sort of like this thing where I was trying to understand the entirety of the topic at hand in order to be asking smart questions and sort of like look smart. But then I realized at some point, like this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I mean, this is stupid. I should come to this with like, you know, some amount of preparation, but really be asking questions as they come, as if I was having a conversation with someone, you know, around a dinner table or at a bar or something, right? And that's when I think my whole outlook on interviews changed. Is like when I was just sort of like asking questions from like a real place of wanting to understand things. And
also not being afraid to look stupid, right? So basically,
yes,
if you don't
so
get something,
that was the fear,
fine
right?
to ask again, because kind of like, yeah. So I had the same fear, it also took me a while to kind of shed it.
Yeah. Not looking stupid was a huge fear, for a long time. Yeah.
Did you guys ever think of shutting it down? Was there ever a moment of like, we're doing too many things, like let's wrap this up and do something else?
Not yet.
There's never that conversation. So then that leads to the next conversation, because if in 10 years you haven't thought of shutting it down, that means that it's likely to survive for the next 10 years. What do you want out of it for the next 10 years?
But I think kind of what we have done is we have added more hosts, right? And we also do more solo episodes. So I think kind of like the onus on every one of us has decreased somewhat. So because basically back in the day, everyone did an episode every other week. And kind of obviously that takes, preparation and so on. And now we maybe do an episode every 3 weeks or so. And I think, so I think kind of the overall workload is, at least for me, has decreased. Same for you guys, right?
Yeah.
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 I just want to become a better capital allocator, Ryan. That's why I keep doing it.
Yeah. Ryan, in the next 10 years, I would like to have an EGI as a co-host. And I would like to have built that system.
Both of you to assume none of us is AI.
So we're gonna bring on our last guest. We're running a little long here, but that's great because these have been great conversations. So we're gonna bring on our last guest, which is Ryan Muirhead of Fabric Ventures, and welcome Ryan. Richard, sorry.
I got upgraded to Ryan there for a second.
I don't know why I called you Ryan. Sorry, Richard Muirhead.
With the Ryan upgrade.
How are you?
I'm super good, thank you. I've been listening a bit in the back, and I've been listening to the voices of my youth. Someone already said that they kind of, Brian, you got outed on a bus or whatever in Cancun for your voice. But it is incredible how that kind of resonates. I guess it's not really my youth. I guess it's my early 40s, but. It
I got recognized on the side of a mountain once. That was a surreal experience.
With a ski helmet on, exactly. That's strong. I was wondering if Ryan's voice had got gruffer naturally, but I can see now he's training it with and actually the chat you're just having just now is give me an idea. Which is like, if you're, Sebastian, you're using it as a forcing function for your DD. And if if voices are so important to people, they're so emotive, you could have something like a competition where you have to do your capital allocation based on listening to somebody, talk about their project and just that. And you have to kind of make the choice now. You could be a fantasy capital allocation if you want. So it's kind of like a speed dating, audio only, with no prep. And no prep, actually, that's a benchmark capital thing. Nobody's allowed to kind of prepare for the pitch from the founders in that kind of weekly investment meeting. So there's kind of, I guess, the notion is there's a bit of sort of level playing field and no preconceptions, no cheating and checking stuff up and whatever. You have to come at it with an average. So you could do a little. We could spin that out and make it into a DApp probably. Fantasy,
yeah, that's an interesting point.
Would it be a security?
Yeah. Huh?
Would it be a security? It's be a game.
Probably all security, but whatever.
If you ask Gary,
yes.
Now there's one guy. I hope maybe we'll have on someday. Gary Gensler. That would be fun
for the 20th year anniversary.
Yeah.
From jail.
Elizabeth Warren, maybe. Jordi, I know you got to jump. Jordi, as always, it's been such a pleasure and honor to have you on.
Thank you very much, guys, and congrats, and continue moving forward. We are not there yet.
Onwards and upwards.
Actually, one last thing on that, Jordi. Yeah, I always take the opportunity to publicly thank Jordi for everything that he's done in this space. People have no idea just how many times Jordi has saved all of our bacon. That we're all here in part because of the benevolent, extraordinary talent of Jordi Baylina. And so I very, very sincerely thank you for everything you do. We're incredibly grateful to you. But leave us with one thing. Where do you want to take ZK-EVM, and what do you want to see in ZK-EVM in the next year?
I want to scale Ethereum. So my goal here is I want to reduce the gas cost of about 50x in the next year, and that's what I'm working for. Compression, mainly compression, and faster proofs.
Is that also like lower latencycy like proofs down to a few bytes, do you think, or is it going to stay in like kilobyte territory, or like where do you think you can take it?
Lower latency. It's may not be. So I mean, it's a good thing to have, and if you have low latency in the proofs, that's, of course, you will get better composability between chains mainly. So that's a good thing, and we are working on that. But we are finding ways that you don't necessarily need low latency. So for me, proofs are more about proof cost and throughput than the latency, because in the consensus you can you can keep the consensus, and you can have a lot of things in the consensus in the consensus layer, in the temporary consensus layer. So low latency is a very good to have, an important thing to have, but for throughput and for scalability, maybe it's not 100% required on that. This is what we're working on in the aggregation layer in Polygon, and this is the things that we are investigating. But yeah, I mean, regarding the ZK-EVM, I mean, we want to scale Ethereum, and we want this to be so people should be able to use Ethereum without having to worry about the gas price for most applications, and this is what we're working on.
So maybe this is what that Ryan's getting at, but outside of scaling Ethereum, if you're looking at using ZK on inferences from large language models, the kind of presentation layer and the user experience, then latency is important. And so it's interesting looking at the collision between the two kind of value chains on the data side and on the kind of computational, the algorithmic side between blockchain and AI. And I think in some parts of that, then latency is going to be critical. I don't know if you're looking at that though.
Yeah, the latency. the thing is that for usability in general, we are talking about latencies that goes in about a second, few seconds, something that's what usability is about. I mean, blockchains, we are a little bit, having a possibility of 15 seconds, we accept that in the Ethereum world on that, but we are talking always about a few seconds. In the proofs, right now we are in right now we are in about 100 seconds, so we need to get at least one order of magnitude better for getting to that phrase. I mean, it's perfectly possible. I think that in the next year, 2 years, it's going to be even better, especially for when the hardware acceleration starts hitting. It starts being a reality on there. There are some difficulties there. It's more about bandwidth and special hardware, but this is the path this is the work that's happening right now in the Zk space.
The other place where proof generation speed is really important is when you start like using it for privacy stuff, right? Because like when you want to actually that actually you need it to be fast, not just on consumer level hardware.
Exactly. I mean, it's like in the mobile, especially when you want to do that in a mobile phone. That's another front. There. I mean, when you want to build a privacy proof in a mobile phone, but the cool thing is that the Zk technology is evolving so fast. I mean, where we were 2 years ago and where we are now is we did a 2x. 2 orders of magnitude improvement in the proof generation in the last 2 years, and this happens in big servers, but this happens also in the mobiles. But it has literally not been time for building the libraries for optimized for mobiles. I mean, we are building those now, and this is happening at this point. And I mean, we are seeing a point that the technology is advancing so fast that the engineering that in general is going fast cannot. I mean, it requires its time to build all these things, and we're seeing that the investigation, the research is going faster than the engineering currently, which is interesting. I mean, it's an interesting moment because this is in general that doesn't used to happen.
So consumer privacy on the device was kind of what I was getting at with inference for LLMs. So I think it's a really interesting use case. But so I'm interested, Jordi, are you looking at hardware acceleration that might be necessary on the consumer device itself? Or you're not yet looking at hardware acceleration?
I think that not necessarily. Maybe, here maybe in a mobile phone, maybe it will take maybe if you 30 seconds to build a proof. I mean, if you accept that, which is in most of the cases, this is could be acceptable. You can actually build, depending what you want to prove. But you can build a privacy proof. Relatively easy. Complex privacy proof on there. Now, for example, Aztec is working a lot on that front, and here porting all the Starks things that we're building to the mobile phones. This are happening. Of course, if you have hardware acceleration, that's better. But in general, the problem is that hardware is a long process. Building an ASIC, this is at least a 1 year, 2 years project itself. And what happened now is that in 2 years in crypto, there is a new protocol that's using something different that you have to throw it away. What you have been investing.
I was going to say before crypto, 1 or 2 years wasn't too bad, but now with crypto, it's a problem.
But at some point, this will get more stable and but not now. Now, we're seeing here things. 2 years. 1 month ago, 2 months ago, there was this B-News thing. All these Starks with binary fields. Super interesting. But this is already changed what we were doing now with prime fields in the Starks. But I mean, things are happening, and you need to check, or even recovering old protocols. Like, I mean, linear people is recovering the GDKs, the GKRs algorithms. I mean, they are putting them together. It's a lot of things happening. So, for example, here investing a lot in hardware is, I would say, is quite risky, because technology is changing a lot. So you don't know for sure what's going to be the right way to do. And I mean, our prover itself, I mean, was super fast, but next generation that we are building is even faster. So it's you are discovering a lot of small tricks and a lot of things that are happening. So it's going really fast, and keeping up from the engineering perspective. I mean, keeping up in all the nuances that are happening is not easy. And even selecting them. I mean, there are so many research, and then, okay, this thing is a good thing or is not a good thing. And sometimes you need to go really deep and actually implement there. And then you realize that maybe that's not as fast as it's promised. And then you need to step back, or then somebody just gets with a trick that okay, but doing this thing this way, then this is super fast, and then you come back, and this is the, I mean, you're going back and forth all the time, and yeah, I mean, this is the crypto, the crypto craziness when you are developing and when you're in this space. But this is also the good thing. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, for engineering perspective, this is a heaven.
So I heard Brian say that he heard the prediction episode at the beginning of 2014. I don't remember listening to that one, but I do remember the Tom Cruise episode. And I went back to listen to it, and do you remember, Brian? You like in all this, you actually sort of you basically said a few things about, like, all this Ethereum thing sounds like science fiction. It's all going to become a kind of reality, and they're going to be, these agents are going to be able to transact economically on our behalf. But the real problem is that we're not going to be able to get the accurate data to them to make sure that they represent our needs in the right way. And I think that was pretty sort of, that showed great foresight, I guess, in January or thereabout, sometime early 2014. You also said you were pretty skeptical about investing in Ethereum. I don't know if you remember that.
About what?
Investing in Ethereum. It seemed a bit complex.
Oh, did I say that?
I got to go back and listen to these episodes, man. I think that was episode 3. It was like Tom Cruise fights to protect the blockchain. I don't remember why we called it that. Maybe because during the episode we like fantasized about a Tom Cruise movie where he was protecting the blockchain or something. I don't know. Yeah.
It was a tiny sliver. It was something to do with how Vitalik had pitched Ethereum. But anyway, it was like, it was rather kind of bizarre context.
Yeah.
But some of the other stuff had too much regulatory content for me. I couldn't get into on Let's Talk Bitcoin and walking me through stuff,
We did have a lot of regulatory content in the beginning, yeah.
Guys,
Jordi, I know you have to. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I guess this whole thing of agents acting on the blockchain, it still doesn't exist quite, right, for people to have that kind of thing, but feels like we're getting closer slowly.
No, I mean, it doesn't exist yet, but I mean, there's a lot of people now kind of innovating, obviously, with LLMs to kind of build those, bots that will kind of represent your interest, or you can talk to, and you feel like they're having a personal conversation with you or whatever. So, but I guess whether or not that will require some intersection of AI and blockchain depends on whether how foolhardy we are as humans. Like, I mean, whether we start trusting these bots out there in the same way as we're trusting the big brands of Web 2. Just a kind of a general social consensus. Oh, it's a bot built by so and so. That's fine. I'll work with it, not knowing how it's been trained or whether what it's doing with any of your kind of personal data. Okay, that's one of the big debates I think of today. How we're going to make sure that we don't kind of sort of further fuel the techno feudalism. With this in this next phase, whether Web3 can actually sort of help AI to any degree. But there's another side on the box, which is that I mean, I don't think any of us would say that. Love to hear opinions on it. That the kind of decentralized governance has quite got to kind of mainstream yet. Sort of simple governance still pretty complex to handle. And so the other
technically speaking or socially speaking?
Well, both.
Do you think it's a technical problem or a social problem?
I mean, it's definitely a social problem.
But also a mechanism design problem, no?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Also a mechanism design problem. So I think kind of like the simple DAO models that we have now, basically they all don't appreciate that attention is kind of the scarce resource here. I think this is something that DAO Stack had figured out super early on. Unfortunately, they went out of business. But I look forward to kind of having those sorts of efforts back.
Well, I think some of it's coming. So Ilya, co-founder at Near, who's got a kind of great LLM background, he talks openly now about the desire to kind of build DAO presidents in bot form, so that you can delegate to some intelligent agents of various different descriptions to represent you. Because there's no way if we're going to have corporations as code popping up everywhere, and we're going to be interested in, for some sliver of our existence, in the effective governance in those DAOs or DACs or whatever, then it can only scale if we're going to trust these twins, these industries.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically specifying your values or kind of having an AI extract your values for you and kind of your economic interests and so on, and then kind of doing kind of like a liquid delegation to those kinds of AIs. Yeah, absolutely. Totally with you here.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I feel like in the Cosmos space, governance working like pretty well. Right. I mean, I think we have like Cosmos Hubs had like 800 governance proposals, Osmosis, tons of governance proposals, and with like, high participation, both in terms of, stake that's voting. So it's like secure from some whale coming in and like, because often on Ethereum, I think in the DAOs, right, you'd have like 3%, 5% of DAO tokens voting in the governance, and then, some big whale can come and skew the vote, but you don't have that issue in the Cosmos governance thing. And then we have, regularly, definitely like thousands of accounts. I mean, there's always a lot of like bot accounts voting too. I mean, Sunny probably has a better idea on this, but there's definitely a lot of people participating in these votes. And I feel that's actually working pretty well. Yeah.
Ryan, I think you need to run. We're gonna.
I do, guys.
Proper sign off. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much
for joining. Thanks
Enjoy
for being a loyal listener all these years. And yeah.
Well, thank you guys for everything you do, for the important education, the like technically sophisticated education that you provide to this ecosystem. It is very important, more important than you know. And so I'm incredibly grateful to all of you for keeping faith and keeping with it, and just compounding on all of our knowledge. And so thanks again.
I second that.
Thanks, man.
And also for helping with all the weekly shopping trips and showers and run. Getting people through life.
Cheers, guys.
Generally.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
Great. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap this party up. It's been 2.5 hours. Thanks for sticking around, Richard. So yeah, where do we go from here? Are we shooting for 20 years? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, why not?
I think you just not just one AI host, but just all of you. It's back to the previous conversations. You're just going to capture generally your values and your interests, and the bot sort of sucks up everything you're reading as you go along through your glasses or contact lenses, and then it can you don't have to do it at all. You can be doing like 10 podcasts a day each. So then you can go forever.
Well, I wish I could do 3. Sometimes 2 is too much.
But
yeah,
then we could actually synthesize a much better podcast host, right? I mean, so basically we could take like the good parts of all of us and, synthesize them into,
Meher's working on this.
Yeah, exactly. Like the thing I'd do is for a project, I would collect the entire sort of information about the project, white paper, website, the entire code base. I would put everything in a retrieval augmented generation pipeline. And then it's like, figure out how to simulate Friedrich or how to simulate Meher. Like somehow like fine tune an LLM so that it is able to simulate me, and then it's able to ask questions from the documentation and generate an episode by itself, right? Like, and then deliver it.
When can I invest? When can I allocate capital? More than an LLM wrapper? That's always the key question.
It's also funny how you kind of become an LLM wrapper for your co-hosts to a certain extent. So kind of depending on who I host with, I know what they're going to ask next. So kind of I have like this LLM representation of them inside my head. Yeah.
So before we end this, are there any final thoughts? Anybody special anyone wants to share? Well, I mean, if nobody's going to, I do. I'd like to, yeah. I mean, I just want to say, like, I absolutely appreciate all of you. I've loved doing the podcast with all of you. I mean, it's always what's great about Epicenter is like, I think we all have, like you were saying, for like we all have this sort of like dynamic, right? So there are n number of dynamics here when we all sort of like do podcasts together, and that's been really fun. And I really appreciate like. Getting to learn so much from being able to co-host the podcast with all of you every week. So I hope I can keep doing this with you guys for the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
What?
Yeah, guys.
How does this work?
I didn't even know that works. That's crazy.
The heart.
How long do I have?
AI
Cool.
is upon us.
I have no idea. Here we go.
Yeah, you have to update your Mac.
So before we end this, it wouldn't be a 10-year anniversary episode without the obligatory Green Day Good Riddance Time of Your Life photo slideshow. So
I had no idea this was coming.
Oh, okay.
So I'll move this over here now.
Yeah, okay.
Room 77.
I had to add Felix in here at the end.
I saw that.
There's no picture of all 6 of us, right?
No, there isn't. But
Not yet.
there is now.
I think Felix is like a little bit larger than the in terms of kind of like body proportions. I think kind of we have to shrink him down by like 10%.
I have some fish there on my arm too. It's sunny.
Let's shrink him by 40%.
Oh gosh. Yeah, hope you guys like that. It was, I had a bunch of pictures from
That was super
over
cool.
the years.
I appreciate you putting this together, Seb.
Yeah, well, you can thank iOS for that. Throw a bunch of pictures into Apple Photos and yeah. Great guys. Well, thanks for everybody who tuned in. There's been tons of people here in live stream. I think we probably like hit 300 people in live stream over the course of the 2.5 hours. So yeah, thank you, and we'll be back next week.
Awesome.
As always.
Thank you.
As every week, except for
As
the
every
1
week.
week that we missed.
That's right. Oh, that was my last. That was my last trivia question.
Oh, I know this one.
Which, you know this one.
Christmas week, 20. I don't know, 19. I know it's definitely Christmas week.
Yeah.
I was so upset. I was sad. I cried.
Well, we won't miss this Christmas week. That's for sure.
And then we reran the David Chaum episode. Remember that?
No, that wasn't David Chaum.
It wasn't David Chaum? Who was it?
No.
It was
Richard
Ralph
Merkel.
Merkel.
Yeah.
Ralph Merkel.
Okay. So some OG, I remember that. We're like, okay, this is an evergreen episode. We can run it anytime.
Yeah.
He was old then, he is old now, no one will notice.
Oh, good. All right. How are you going, guys?
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.